There was no forensic evidence to prove how a low-level spy ended up dead and locked inside a holdall, so the coroner had to review witness statements to try to make sense of the mysterious death of Gareth Williams. Dr. Fiona Wilcox came to the conclusion that he was probably murdered, but the lack of certainty has distressed his family, as has the security service's delay in reporting him missing.
He was expected in work all of last week and didn't appear.
To lose a son and brother in such circumstances as have been outlined during the course of this inquest only compounds the tragedy. Our grief is exacerbated by the failure of his employers at MI6 to take even the most basic inquiries as to his whereabouts and welfare, which any reasonable employer would have taken. We are also extremely disappointed over the reluctance and failure of MI6 to make available relevant information.
The coroner tried to rule out some of the more implausible theories about the 31-year-old codebreaker. Although he had an expensive collection of women's clothes and shoes, she was satisfied they were intended for presents and he wasn't a transvestite. The clothes were too small and there was no underwear found. Although his computer had been used to research bondage on a few occasions, there was no evidence of an interest in pornography or sadomasochism. She wondered if details of his private life had been leaked to the press by someone trying to manipulate the evidence. But Dr. Wilcox criticised the police and MI6 for their handling of the investigation. The coroner said she wasn't suggesting that Mr. Williams died at the hands of one of his MI6 colleagues, but it was a legitimate line of inquiry, because Gareth was essentially a private man with few friends outside of work and who was unlikely to have allowed a stranger into his flat. Despite that, none of his co-workers were asked to make formal statements, and MI6 staff were allowed to examine evidence before it was handed over to police. The case has brought an unusual public statement on behalf of the head of MI6. Sir John Sawyers recognises that the service's failure to act more swiftly when Gareth first became absent from work has contributed to the anguish and suffering of his family. On behalf of the whole organisation, Sir John regrets this deeply and apologises unreservedly. After the inquest, the police renewed their appeal for information which could help their investigation.
The inquest has raised several new lines of inquiry, and the investigation will now refocus and actively pursue all the evidence heard and all the new lines of inquiry.
In a case full of intrigue, nothing was more bizarre than the idea that someone would want to lock themselves in a holdall. But with no conclusive proof that this was a murder, experts had to consider whether it was feasible to do such a thing. So Peter Folding tried hundreds of times to not just squeeze himself into an identical bag, but then padlock it from the inside. It proved impossible.
I believe he was dead, placed into the bag, and he was lifted into the bathroom, and so the body decomposition fluids would run out through the plug hole. The heating was turned up, and most of all, the key thing here, there was no handprints around the bath where he would have needed to climb into the bag in the bath. This was just a strange case, and it hasn't left me ever since.
The coroner admitted that we may never know what happened to Gareth Williams in his final hours. That may be due to the meticulous method of the killer in leaving no clues. But the sensitivity of dealing with the strange death of a spy may also have hindered the investigation. Ian Woods, Sky News.